There are more and more women architects these days. And since the architect is God on historic construction sites, God must be a woman.
There were women on construction sites in the Middle Ages in all positions and all activities.
To think that part of my work will be there for 100, 200 or 300 years, it's incredible.
Hello, I'm Annette Young, the host of the 51%. In this special edition, we're celebrating the reopening of Notre Dame after that devastating fire almost destroyed the building more than 5 years ago. And we're focusing on the women who helped to rebuild and restore this incredibly historic cathedral.
On commence par celle-là, on enquille la deuxième. On la dépose aujourd'hui, comme ça on vérifie s'il n'y a pas une figure.
It's the day of installation of the last two roofing slabs. The stones measuring 1 metre by 2, weighing literally a tonne each. Supervising this extremely difficult operation is Clara Bayer.
Moi je suis à 0 là.
Aged only 25, Clara is one of the youngest project managers on site. Her mission is coordinating different tradespeople while ensuring it all goes smoothly and in the most efficient manner possible, all while facing constant deadlines. Even if it wasn't always easy, and despite her youth, she relished the challenge.
J'ai la chance d'avoir un père menuisier.
I'm lucky to have a father who's a carpenter. And he took me to construction sites since I was 5 years old. Nowadays, these ancient trades are struggling to recruit labour, and the workforce is ageing. So these artisans really need to pass on the knowledge. So we got to know each other, we all listened to each other, and together we were able to learn from each other. Because the construction industry is always about teamwork.
A significant number of women worked on this key construction site, not just as tradespeople, but also as engineers and architects.
There are more and more women architects these days. And since the architect is God on historic construction sites, God must be a woman.
The building of Notre Dame began in 1163 and lasted nearly 200 years. Yet despite popular belief in being the Middle Ages, women were actually part of the original workforce, as medieval historian Sandrine Victor explains.
Women were involved in just about everything. There were women who were glaziers, stone cutters, painters and blacksmiths. Then there were women who actually did the clearing, which meant carrying very, very heavy loads. So in fact, they played a very active part in the construction process.
Women were treated as second-class citizens in the Middle Ages, chaperoned until their death by a man, be it their father, brother, husband or son. So to overcome obstacles, they resorted to ingenious methods.
They were entrepreneurs as they ran workshops with their husbands. But they also ran businesses on their own when their husbands had died or they were away. They also dealt with customers, if you want to use a slightly modern word, and managed the workforce, sending them out to work sites while also being in charge of payroll.
If this aspect of history is still largely unknown, it's simply because there's barely any mention of women in historical documents.
Women don't often appear in documentation for several reasons. Firstly, because those who kept the accounts would say, "I have paid the 80 workers." We don't know whether they were men, women, children or slaves. In fact, it's always quite difficult to know. And then you have a few little miracles, such as when those who kept detailed accounts listed first names, female first names, and sometimes even feminized the names of professions.
Also damaged in the blaze were notable works of art from the Middle Ages. And 8 centuries later, Paris-based art restorer Marie-Cécile Cafori was among those responsible for rejuvenating these paintings. But in a burnt-out cathedral, the working conditions were far from easy.
On top of everything, the whole cathedral was lined with lead, so we had to work with very specific, very heavy equipment. We had to wear a mask with assisted ventilation and air. There was also great solidarity among us all. I was pregnant for part of the project, working until the 9th month, and I had people carrying everything for me. They wouldn't let me carry anything. It was quite an incredible adventure.
It became a historical as well as an artistic adventure. For an art restorer, working on the rebuilding of Notre Dame also meant travelling back in time, from the Middle Ages until today, uncovering previous restoration efforts in the process.
The lower areas of the cathedral suffered a little more from the fire because of damp from the water used by the firefighters. After this work, we were able to clean up the walls, and that's when we discovered this magnificent range of colors, which dates back to the renovations carried out in the 19th century. Underneath these paintings, in some places you can see remnants of medieval paintings, notably on the choir enclosure, which we also restored.
Each artisan worked to ensure their contributions remained effectively unseen, allowing only what was there before to remain visible.
I'm so proud to have been part of this adventure, but it's a bit of a paradox because we're proud and at the same time it was a great lesson in humility because we were just a tiny link in this chain. There were almost 500 of us working inside the cathedral, and it was also a lesson in humility considering it was built more than 800 years ago. We were all constantly amazed by what was going on.
Chloe Ishay was equally in awe. A roofer by trade, she's worked in rain, wind and sometimes even under the sun. In the 4 years Clara's been in the profession, she's already worked on some of France's most iconic buildings, including the Grand Palais and the Château de Chambord. But Notre Dame was something else.
It's an iconic building, an important French monument, and as we saw with the fire, it also has an important place in international history. As a result, there's a certain amount of pressure, personal pressure, that I placed on myself to be able to produce a quality piece of work while making sure that Notre Dame was once again watertight.
Of the 5 years it took to rebuild the cathedral, at least 2 were spent securing the building, leaving only 3 years for the actual reconstruction. Such as restoring these magnificent statues, a defining feature of Notre Dame.
On se rate sur place. Parce qu'en fait, à chaque fois, on l'a tapé, et ça fait ça.
Donc d'abord 2 gros points en dessous, et ensuite,
comme ça, elle va se
on
maintenir,
refait,
on la
oui.
retourne.
La vouivre, c'est...
The chimera is a lead statue, which was made in the workshop, but it still needs to be touched up a little here and there, before finally being placed in the cathedral. The statue weighs 70 kilos, and to carry alone, I weigh 60, so it's not great.
Sometimes Chloe felt isolated, working in a very male-dominated environment.
I must have heard it once or twice that women had no business being on rooftops. And maybe I am naive, but I don't think it was meant to be mean or misogynistic. Perhaps it's more of a case of caring too much, mainly from an almost paternalistic point of view. The use of scaffolding and the mechanical and electrical means, such as cranes, winches or lifts, makes it possible for women to lift heavy loads. This opens up the profession to women, so I think attitudes are gradually changing, little by little.
Some 2,000 people worked on this project, all determined to repair the extensive damage while protecting the building from the ravages of time.
To think that part of my work will be there for 100, 200 or 300 years, it's incredible. It's hard to grasp how huge it is.
It's clear everybody who worked on the cathedral's reconstruction feels incredible pride, aware of having made history, or her story, by helping to bring this iconic building back to life.